Welcome to Second Take, the show that takes a look at the issues behind the news. South Africa's wind industry is having to adapt in light of recent public procurement failures. Terence Creamer joins me to talk about the issue, as well as the Department of Electricity and Energy's new renewables and grid targets. Hi, Terence.
Hi, Chanel.
What has changed in the local wind industry in recent years?
You know, the wind industry has always been about public procurement, about the REAP program, the Renewable Energy Independent Power Producer Procurement Program, run jointly by the National Treasury and the Department of DMRE in the past, now the Department of Electricity and Energy, and having several bid windows. And I think we've procured about 7 gigawatts of wind through that process. But that is now sort of fraying at the edges, especially for the wind projects. So the last successful bid window was before COVID, after a long hiatus where there wasn't any procurement activity. And because of what happened during COVID with energy prices generally, supply chain disruptions, a lot of those projects that were bid at very low prices, very, very, very low, didn't actually reach financial close. We then had subsequent bid windows where a number of wind projects bid, but they were told there's no grid capacity in the provinces that they bid in. So there was no advancement to preferred bidders for wind projects. And then the similar happened with the latest round. So it's really has been disrupted in terms of public procurement. And it's really about the grid and also about our curtailment rules there that haven't really been in place. So what's happened in the meantime is that we have had this liberalisation of the electricity market, and those projects that were quite mature, some of those have contracted directly through private power purchase agreements, mostly with mining or large industries. And about the latest global wind energy report says nearly 2,000 megawatts of projects are in that sort of category, so based on private off-taker market. So that's a major shift. And what we're also seeing now is it's not just those that are going to take holus bolus all that wheeled electricity, but now we're seeing the entry of traders and aggregators who are also contracting for wind projects that they are then selling on to multiple clients. So that's starting to emerge as well. These are sort of the nascent stages of a competitive market emerging. We haven't got there yet, but we're in the sort of early stages, the liberalisation, the removal of the cap, the licensing cap on private projects that sort of opened the way. And we're starting to see it now in the figures.
The local and global outlook is somewhat clouded despite ongoing records.
Yes, I mean, we still saw another record, and the outlook is probably for more records to come. I think about 117 gigawatts of wind was installed last year around the world. It's very lumpy though. It's very much based in China dominates this market by a long shot. Asia dominates this market, and then Europe, and then the rest of the world is lagging quite significantly. So that there are continual records, but if we look at the pace that, say, for instance, we want to reach in terms of the trebling of renewables capacity, which is what the world has sort of agreed to through the various COP processes, as well as the International Energy Agency says we need to do in terms of decarbonisation, that we weigh off those sort of targets. The scale has to be far higher. And I think we are hitting a number of headwinds this year, and it's going to be interesting to see how the wind market, we can see how it's been difficult in South Africa as public procurement has sort of faltered. The auctions are faltering in the rest of the world, but there's also ideological issues that have emerged. A lot of opposition to wind projects around the world, a lot of misinformation, disinformation around wind projects. There's the tariff wars that are emerging, and these are very integrated supply chains. They're quite sophisticated pieces of equipment. The value of sort of wind and solar is the fact that they are factory sort of fabricated and installed, so you get a consistency and you can continue to lower those costs, and that's been the sort of the magic formula of wind and solar. That's what's brought down the costs. Now that requires integrated supply chains. Once you start adding trade restrictions into those supply chains, it's difficult. Plus, more muscular industrial policy is emerging around the world. So, including South Africa, we're looking at our industrial policy. How are we going to localize, say, wind and solar components? Which components should we localize? Which should we focus on? You have to do this quite skillfully because ultimately the consumer pays if you don't do it skillfully, and your manufacturing industry isn't competitive if you don't do it skillfully. So it's a very tricky dynamic, but a lot of countries, led very much by the largest in the world, the United States has come up with a very muscular trade and industrial strategy. Whether it's going to play out, it's very heavy industry focused, even though their comparative and competitive advantages seem to be in services and AI. They are looking to try and re-establish these heavy industries. What that's going to mean, for instance, for the wind industry supply chain is going to be interesting. What that's going to mean for costs is going to be interesting, and what that's going to mean for the ability to carry on year after year having record installations. I think we are entering a difficult period, and we'll have to wait and see at the end of this year, maybe even next, to see what impact these sort of measures that we see national governments that are putting in, plus the overlay of everywhere having this grid infrastructure deficit. We haven't invested enough in our grid, and really wind relies heavily on the grid.
Meanwhile, the Department of Electricity and Energy has also set some targets.
Yes, I mean, they spoke to lawmakers this week at the Portfolio Committee. This is a newly minted department. It only started fully as a separated entity, operating from its own premises in Pretoria on the 1st of April. It's got an acting director, director general now, and they gave some indication to Parliament. This is what, over the next 5 years, what we are hoping to achieve. In the renewable space, they're talking about trying to add another 20 gigawatts. If we look at the draft integrated resource plan, which is controversial because it hasn't been fully consulted, many feel, because there was major changes made to it without a real reconsultation. But that's very close to cabinet approval now, and it looks like there's quite a lot of wind capacity in that. So that'll be interesting, even though solar costs are the ones that have fallen sharply and continue to fall. And solar installations are outstripping anything else in the renewable space. So that there seems to be a big target around renewables. There's a big emphasis on the grid. They're saying they would like to see at least 5,000 kilometers of new power lines installed by the end of this decade. That's probably slower than what we need. We know we've got this 14,000 kilometer vision to 2035. So we should be accelerating that pace, but at least that, and using independent transmission projects to accelerate that pace, because the pace of rollout at the moment is extremely slow, and that's really got a number of reasons. But basically, the National Transmission Company, South Africa's balance sheet, is a constraint. Its ability to also get projects through the pipeline has been a constraint. So really to try and bring in private sector participation to accelerate that grid. So those were some of the sort of big items. They want to also get the gas master plan sorted out. That's been knocking around for many, many years. The integrated resource plan will be a next big, I think, target that people will be looking to see what's in that plan. How relevant that plan still is as the market liberalizes, because the market will talk. The market is talking. It's procuring, as we said, a lot more wind and solar for itself. But obviously we need to have this supported by the flexible generators, the gas potentially, the battery storage is becoming a major theme. So there's a lot to do, and there's a lot of moving parts. And within this plan that they sent to lawmakers, they made it clear they want to continue with the reforms to have a competitive generation market, have much more RPPs in the mix, have a multi-market model in operation, fully trading by the end of this 5-year period.
Thank you. That's the Second Take show for this week. Thank you for watching, and join us again next time for more news analysis. Also, don't forget to listen to the audio version of our Engineering News Daily email newsletter.